How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Dymat channel. I'm Chris Bilton. I was a professional jeweller in the UK for over 20 years, but now I'm living in Japan and keeping my skills alive and putting them to good use by making jewellery, making instructional videos. If you're into that kind of thing, please click like and subscribe, notification bell and all that, helps the channel grow. And yeah, that'll be cool, thank you. Right, let's say thank you to some awesome people the last few days. I've got new patrons and members. We got Elizabeth Ann, we got Joseph N. Mora, Deborah Solomon this morning, thank you Deborah. Members, we got two new ones, CC Bob and Earl Bramley Howard. Nice to see your name again, Earl. Earl contributes quite a lot to the channel by always liking and messaging, and that in itself, just commenting on videos, helps the algorithms understand that the channel has value to people, so it will automatically recommend it to more people. Today, for a couple of things, I've lost my microphone, so the sound quality might be down a little bit. I hope you can hear me clearly. And I'm sick of air conditioning the last few days, so I'm leaving my aircon off, so I've got my towel on, and I may look hot and sweaty, but it's my choice. That's what I'm doing. I'm weird like that. Don't like air conditioning air too much. Right, you know, hot yoga, this is hot jewellery today. Today we are making a collet, and it's a bit of a cheeky way. I'm not making it to a stone or anything, but I just want to show you it's possible to make a collet this way. It's quite cheeky in the fact that we are just basically cutting out two shapes out of a flat bit of metal, and then cutting them up in a special way, and then you solder them together and you end up with a nice 4-claw collet. Right, I said I'm not making it to a stone, but I just picked up a stone. It's kind of just, it's like drilled into me how to make jewellery and was working to something, so it helps out a little bit. So essentially we're making two V shapes, and then, well, almost like a triangle, like basically that'll be the outside of the collet, and then cutting out the inner shape, do that twice, and then we're going to join them together, crossing each other, and you end up with a 4-claw. So you can give it a bit of your own design by essentially this shape, yeah, kind of. But you can give it a bit of your own design, so if you wanted to, right, this is what I'm thinking. It's like the foundation shape, but you can give it a bit of your own design by scooping it out a little bit like that, or a bit wider. I don't know, whatever you want, whatever you come up with. But bear in mind, the more of a complicated shape you put there, like, don't do nothing mad, because just making it really difficult for yourself to clean up. So I think today we should just stick to just a flat side. Maybe practice that one if you like how it goes, you like the design. Do another one and then start adding like funny bits on the end or whatever you want to do. It's hot. Okay, so I said we're not working to a stone. We are working to a stone. It is good practice, even though this is not really about making a collet to fit a stone perfectly. It's a good idea, I think, to have a stone in your hand and make a collet for it. So just for convenience, I'm just setting my dividers to the width of the girdle of this stone. What is it? It's like an asher cut. Yeah, so let's go in that, and then we'll make the claws nice and long, so if the stone was to be set, it will just come down a little bit, because we're doing a V, yeah, so the lower the stones goes, the lower the stone sits, the more of that claw is going to have to be cut away for it to fit in there, so just make the claws nice and long, be fine. So yeah, we've got that. If you've got a plate of metal, don't go right in the middle, because you give yourself loads of work to saw it out. Try and go close to the edge, just for the sake of not wasting metal. So I'm going to do mine about there. So basically I've got two little dots. So I like to, just one of the first stages, I like to hold the stone up against the metal. If I've got a sheet of metal or a length of wire or something, it just helps me visualise how it's going to look finished. It's sort of a step towards going through the job to completion in your mind. Just so I can visualise what angles are likely needed to be. So I'll just look at the depth of it. Let's take a measurement. It's just under 5 mil. There you go. This is all a bit rough at the moment. So I've got 2-3 marks now got the distance I want to go to, and then the depth where that V can go down to. That's about halfway, just there. Again, this is not like final decisions, but I am gonna draw basically what we're gonna cut out. But as for actually making it really accurate and perfect, you can sort of do that as you proceed more slowly with your files and sawing and stuff. So I just want to make sure I've got this on video clearly what I was doing, if the camera will focus. Got the width here, I sort of guessed halfway, drew lines down to it. So that's kind of the gap from the side, and then set, it's going to come down a little bit so the stone will drop down hidden in the metal. By the way, I should have mentioned earlier, this plate is 1.5mm thick. It's quite thick plate, and I chose that on purpose because when my claws are in there, they're going to be like the sides of that, yeah, like parallel. But because it's quite thick, I can file the top more of a point. So the bottom, it gets thicker as it goes down. It's like a little bit of a design I was thinking of trying. So yeah, if you start with something thicker, it gives you a bit more possibility on what to do with your collet. Hopefully that's clear for you on your screen. There's my lines I've drawn, so that's the top. So I'm just going across a little bit. That's going to be the top of the claw. And maybe that's a bit chunky. Hang on, I need to look at what I'm doing as I'm doing it. Can't see it myself. So something a bit like that. Now I just have an idea. The top of it, rather than just finishing at that angle, I might go back to going straight up, just for the end. Like that. So there you go, just my extra little bit of design. We're just putting these kind of like blocks on top, just little vertical sections, just going to help it be a useful collet for setting. So yeah, I've got that flat on top now, and you can really see how badly drawn that is. Skip to the end of the video if you want to see how it turned out. But that distance there and there was correct for my stone, so if I mark out halfway, I can use my set square to draw a line perfectly vertical down across the middle, and then I've got like a nice triangle to use as a guide for the rest of it, getting all the angles nice. What I did was, that guy had that vertical line, so I put a dot on that line, and then I set my dividers to the same width, so from the centre to the outside, from the centre to the inside of that claw, then obviously mirror that the other side, and then same distance either side, right at the bottom. So now I've got that point and that point. I'm now going to use the end of this to line it up, and then just draw a nice straight line. So we just put my dart in that dot, line that one up there. There you go. There's my accurate line. So I thought I'd keep going and trying to mark it out accurately just so it looks nice on the metal, but doing this never really works out for me. I find it quite time consuming to get it all nice, like getting all your measurements and stuff and angles correct, but it's sort of a waste of time to try and get it really accurate, because you've got to cut it out and file it accurately after that. So you may as well just draw it quickly, as long as you understand the angles and distances you need. You may as well just draw it kind of quickly and then spend your time cutting it out and filing it back accurately. There's this old-fashioned thing in the jewellery trade, jewellers used to call it doing a paint-up. Like, the customer would ask about a piece, and kind of to help the customer understand what their finished piece will look like, the jeweller will go and spend ages doing this beautiful little intricate, highly detailed painting of their jewellery piece, and I actually find that artwork a little bit disgusting anyway. I don't really like looking at them. And then also, just because you painted it really nicely doesn't mean you're going to make it really nicely. So I've never really understood why people would do that, and it's a really old-fashioned thing. Fortunately, it's kind of gone now, because I would hate this job if I was forced to do a nice painting of everything before I actually got to start making it. It's just, for me, it's a waste of time. But anyway, it's an old-fashioned thing. Some people like it, whatever, and some jewellers still do it as well. And I think it's mad. I think it's such a waste of time. Whatever works for you to get to this stage and be able to cut it out nicely. But it's worth getting this first one correct as best possible, because this is going to be the guide for a second one, because we've got to make a replica of that. We need two exactly the same. Oh, this blade is rubbish. By the way, if I say I don't like something, like I don't like those paint-ups, don't feel bad if you like it. It's just my opinion. I don't like them. It's probably more to do with not the artwork or the techniques for painting. It's probably more to do with the fact that it is quite old-fashioned, and it's always like bit nasty design, 80s, 90s jewellery you usually see in it. If you like 80s and 90s jewellery, don't feel bad that I said I don't like it just then. Just have your own opinion, don't worry about what mine is. Give you some advice here. Don't go online, don't put your face on YouTube saying you don't like moissanite. My good God, I've upset the moissanite crowd. If you go to my moissanite video, have a look at all the comments. Like, every day I get some like verbal abuse from people who love moissanites, and then each one of those comments gets like hundreds of likes as well. It's like an army of people that really hate me. Chopped out this, I've got this little triangle shape. I'm not going to cut out the inside bit yet. What I may as well do is leave that a nice solid chunk so it's nice and strong. Then got less worries when I'm holding it in pliers and stuff and getting the sides nice and flat. So yeah, I will literally, obviously, keeping an eye on my lines I've drawn. I will be trying to get the sides nice and flat, really perfect. And the angles, quite important, they really perfectly mirror each other. So take your time at this stage. This is the important one. So when you're trying to file accurately, how you hold the file, well, it's more like how you move the file is important. Like, you're going to do a flat section, you've got to keep it flat. Don't have a bad technique of rocking it about or tilting the angle as you move it. So keep it still as you move it along. And then that's how you end up with really nice, sharp, straight lines. Okay. So going across it is good for reducing the distance or the angle even, but then to finish off I'd always go along it, looking at the line, making sure it's really nice and straight. I mean, parallels are pretty much my go-to pliers for holding things when I'm sawing anyway. Not always working very well because things can move about in there. It's like they don't clamp parallel very well. They always sort of squeeze harder in one spot so things can move around a little bit. But anyway, they are usually the best choice. That vertical bit first. Are you not seeing any of this? Sorry. So I've gone down vertically. Then when you move your saw, keep going up and down, but then turn it. Don't just twist it and then start trying to saw in that direction. That's how you break a blade. So I'm staying on the inside of my line. I want to file it back to the line. So now cut out reasonably accurately, but now taking the accuracy to a next level. Gentle bit of needle filing. Going for my, what do they call this? I call it a safety back. It's called a barrette, I think. It gets named in jewellery tool catalogues. Flat, obviously check your work, make sure you're not tilting the file one way or the other. Going down to a point, make sure you're not damaging that point. This file is good for locking in, because you haven't got teeth on the side. Just slide it up there, and then it just locks in my little corner, so I ain't got to worry about it cutting in like a square file would. Just changing the angles of that top little bit, just doing a bit, looking at it, doing a bit, looking at it. It's a good way to proceed. And when you've got more experience, you can sort of bomb ahead a little bit more, like you're confident with your file angles, you can use coarser files and work really quickly, because you've got the experience to not go too far accidentally. Happy with that. It's not perfect, but it's good enough to move on. And basically what I did, if you're doing this or your own kind of design, how I proceeded was measured the stone, got the centre line going down, made sure that was flat across the top, and then that's basically just got that T section, and you just build the rest around it with the sort of measurements of the design you want. So yeah, that's how I proceeded to get to this finished shape. Now I've got to make another one. We're replicating that now, and we are doing that by gluing it down onto the plate of metal. So first step, I sandpaper the side I want gluing down, just to make sure it's free of grease and stuff, so the glue works well. Might as well give the plate a bit of a buff. Funny shapes cut out all around it. Choose a spot with the least, that will give you the least waste. I'm thinking like there might be good. Oh yeah, there, look at that. That's good. Not much waste there, or just chopping off this kind of bit of no man's land that's no good for much. So yeah, don't just plonk it in the middle, then you're giving yourself loads of work to do to cut it out, and then you're wasting loads of metal as well. You want to leave as much of a big piece as possible. All the super glue nowadays seems to be like gel. I prefer like the old stuff when it was a bit like runny. It was like a bit more friendly for going across an entire surface, and then you didn't put too much on. I'm not put it right up to the edge, I'll just put it close enough where I can use a file and not have to saw anything out. Push that down. Give it a minute or so. And next, with something very sharp, we score around it. Hopefully you didn't put too much glue on. It's better to have not quite enough glue than too much, because too much means you get it all building up around the edges and it causes a problem. So yeah, just go around it again, just to doubly make sure you didn't miss any bits and to make it a nice strong line. You can try and cut out around it if you want, but I think it's a bit of a liability. You might accidentally damage that with your saw blade. So I'm going to recommend give it a bit of heat until it comes off. Shouldn't take much, he says. There you go. And what I'm planning on doing is cutting that out and then gluing it back to that first one again, so we can file it up and get them both like really identical. I decided to cut mine out as like a big triangle again, just because it's easier to hold it at any angle and do a good job cutting it out. But at the same time, would have been totally possible just to saw around the outline, and then that would have been a benefit because I get to keep that extra bit of metal, extra bit of length there, which might be useful in the future. But whatever. That's what I decided to do. So I've got this now. So I've got a very rough, bigger than the first one shape. I'm just going to file it up a bit just to give me a bit of a head start. But basically I don't want to go down to that line, or just past that line would be more accurate for the size of the first one. Because I'm going to glue it back on, and I can't risk this being smaller in any dimension than the first one. I need to be filing this one back to make it match the first one. So the lines scored on here went around the outside of this one, so already they're bigger than that. So I'm really playing it safe by not even cutting or filing up to that line. So when I put that on, it's just a bit bigger all the way around it, but that's great because that means I get to file back this one into that shape with no problems at all. Because obviously if that's thinner in one spot than that one, it's no good. It's not going to be able to make it the same. Another top tip for you, something I've learned from experience since living here in Japan. A couple of times I bought the really cheap super glue where you get like 3 or 4 packs and it costs like equivalent of like £1, and you think you're getting a lot of glue for your money, but you're not. The glue is poor quality, doesn't work very well, and then quite often you use it once and it just dries out, and then there's just like it evaporates and it's just empty tube. So with bad experience of the cheap stuff, I bought the most expensive one I could find in the equivalent of about £3. So still very cheap for something that's so useful. And had this months now, it's coming to the end of its life. I've literally saved money by buying the more expensive one. So same with tools and stuff, I think. You get the high quality stuff, you actually spend less over time. So gluing these together, you've got to be a bit careful with the position of it. Obviously you want metal, an edge of metal all the way around it. If you get it wrong, you've ruined it. You need to unstick it and stick it back on in the middle. So yeah, now we're just simply filing around it and then get the sides nice and flat. Obviously you want to try and file the thick one and not at all file the thin one, because then you're changing the shape of that, the dimensions, and if you change it one side, you've then got to change it the other side to get it to match again. So yeah, be careful. Parallel pliers. Start off with coarse blades, just for a bit of quick work. Again, do not touch the thin one. I mean, you can touch it, it'll be alright, but just don't really file it. So yeah, starting off with the bigger files, and as I get really close to it, I will go down to needle files in all the little nooks and crannies, and after that we'll paper it, get it really, really sharp and really nice. Parallel pliers are good again because you're clamping it closed. If you're holding it with fingers and filing it, you're putting pressure on it to separate it, and the glue might break, which is not the end of the world, but it's a bit of a shame because then you've then got to glue them back together again. It's going to be more difficult to get it nice and accurate. Ideally, they don't separate now until you're finished. So I use my coarse file, like almost down to it, matching it. I almost caught it. Well, I did catch it accidentally. Look, you can see there's a few marks on there. When I get this close, I'll go to a more gentle file, finer teeth, or in this case, just more worn out and old, a bit less abusive to the metal. And let's go to the next stage. And when I get really close, stop going sideways. I will then sort of go up and down it, really being careful to get my angles correct and make sure I'm going along the lines of the original one. Nice and flat. I've started attacking the inside one now. It might be an idea to use exactly the same tools you did last time. And this file is not really as coarse as I would like it to get the work done quickly, but it is going to do it neatly, so because it's the correct width and nice and flat, hasn't got the teeth on the side, so it's still the perfect tool, same as doing the first one. So I'm just going to carefully hold it at the correct angle, correct position, just let it do its work, and it should take me down to the same as that one. Okay, so working across it, I'm stopping quite regularly to double check what I'm doing and if I like how the new one is taking shape. Ideally, you only file the new one, and then you should barely touch this one, but that's not going to happen. You are going to drag across it a little bit, but just be careful, basically. So yeah, I'm like I keep saying, keep repeating, I'm working slowly. This one, not 100% correct, needs flattening out a little bit, but almost there. So working on this one now, still a bit of a step. Yeah, just getting there slowly. So you can tell that point looks a little bit across, so when I've got that one down as far as I need to, that surface will come down a bit, so that'll pull the point across a little bit, a tiny amount. Apologies again for having no microphone, no external mic connected to my camera. I hope you can hear me clearly. I said I would get a new microphone yesterday, I did not. So I should get one today. I don't think I'm going to go out today. I want to get this video finished and then edited before my children's swimming lesson. So I'm not going to go out into town. I'll go tomorrow. Ideally get it all filed up quite accurately and then go around it with a buff stick. Paper discs are really good. If you're a little bit experienced with them, they're very good for getting nice flat surface finishes across stuff. I say that with experience they're good, because if you don't have experience, it's possible you might start putting wrong angles on it and ruining all your accurate filing. So if you're a little bit unsure about using those, just stick with your buff sticks, they do a perfectly good job. I'm putting weight on that one when I do that, just a little bit over there, just to reduce it, but now it's getting down to the height, sort of bring it back, my weight on the file evenly across all of it. So I've been filing around it, just having a look. All my angles and stuff parallel. Needs a little bit of tweaking. Like, I'm looking around it now, like I think that corner's down a little bit, so this needs straightening off, a little bit of meat taken off there. The old wrapper file up in paper trick. Let's get inside. There you go, so they're all papered all the way around. So now I'm going to put them on the block, give them a bit of heat, and separate them. Did you hear about the twins that lost each other in Australia? Yeah, they separated at Perth. Come on. My high quality super glue is doing its job a bit too well. There you go. So you should have two shapes that are very, very similar to each other. I think I mentioned on the channel before, when I'm making two of something that have got to be identical, when I'm sort of testing them out for the first time, I always sort of line them up and make them touch each other at the side. So you really get an idea of how closely matched they are. So yeah, okay, next stage. Alright, so now we've got these two shapes. We need to get them going together, so you can probably figure it out. We're going to cut a little shape at the bottom of one, and then we'll cut a little shape at the sort of top of the V of the other, and then they should slot together nicely. What I'm thinking of doing, just to make it easier for myself to cut the little shapes out correctly, is get a line going from the point down to the middle of the bottom. Might be an idea to use a tool to get it really accurate, but I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to draw a line by hand. Gently scratch it on there. So that's a nice little guide for cutting alongside. Tell you what I will do though, a bit more accurate than that, is get a measurement or a halfway point from the point in the V to the bottom, and then it's like just over 4 mil. If I can mark halfway, then I know how far to cut down one side than the other. Set this to 2 mil. 2 mil from the bottom. We should take a measurement of the width as well, because that is going to slot down in there, so we need to cut out just enough for that to slide in. You don't want a big gappy hole in there, it has to be filled up with solder. We'll try and get it to slot together like really neatly and nicely, nice and tight, and then the soldering is going to be much easier and neater as well. So measurement of my sheet, 1.5. Set those to 1.5, tightened it up. Now I'm just going to lay this over equally either side of the point and try and scratch 2 little lines on there. Not the most accurate way, I know, but at least it starts you off with a guide of knowing what 1.5 looks like on the metal. So there you go, it's got 2 little dots scratched down. That's perfectly good enough for me. I will now scratch down little vertical lines. So there you go, now I've got my halfway point. I've sort of drawn a little shape I need to cut out. It is not that accurate, but it is perfect guide really. So I'll just, if I feel like I've drawn it more one side than the other, then I'll just carefully cut inside my lines and then file it back perfect. We are ultimately making it to fit that, so just keep cutting it, keeping it central and trying that in there until it fits nicely. And then for your other piece, we're going to be cutting up from the bottom. So again, using this, 2 little dots. I think the width was just less than what I've got at the bottom there. Got my line going down the centre, so that's my guide. We're getting these 2 dots on there. Two dots, got my vertical line, got my halfway point marked, or 2 mil up from the bottom anyway. So there you go. I've got my 2 little shapes marked out, ready for cutting. Once they're cut out, it should slot down. I think I'm going to have to deepen the cutouts a little bit, just so it slots right up, because obviously you don't want it going not enough. It's got to click right up, so the claws are flat. If you've got one doesn't go up as much as the other one, you have to, and then you solder it, you have to sort of lower the claws on the one that's sticking up, and then that kind of ruins the designs matching. So yeah, preferable to cut out too much rather than not enough. Obviously go careful, you've done a lot of work and worked accurately and took your time getting these shapes the same. If you balls this up, you've wasted a lot of time. No pressure. Go sideways, cut this little chunk out. Okay. I've got this little shape out. It's too narrow, but good. I can use files, paper disc, whatever I need to open it up and get this bit fitting. I instantly reached for my paper disc and I was like, nah, it's a bit wavy and it's got flex to it, so this is probably a good tool. These little grinding wheels I use a lot. Just skim down the sides of that. Perfect. Just keep doing that until I get the width I need. Just keep this in my hand, keep trying it. It's pretty close, but it needs a bit of work. It gets hot, so just hold it in pliers. These take a bit of practice to use, but when you get good with them, or confident with them, they're really, really useful. Take the bottom down a bit. I'll tell you what would be probably more sensible and better than that is a nice square-shaped needle file. Once this measure, that might actually be properly perfect. Oh, look at that! I'm using this. Come on. It's just a little bit less than the width I need, which is perfect. It gives me a bit of room for like inaccurate human hands not filing straight and wobbling it around. As long as I go down right in the middle, this is going to be good. Oh, this is nice. If I go down with this file and then open it up just a touch with that disc, this is going to work out really well. So yeah, have a look through your tools, think about what's best to work neatly. Okay, so it looks a bit rough because I just rammed a file in there basically, but the measurements are pretty good. perhaps a bit loose there, but it tightens up. So this is, I'm happy with that. I can make this work. So I'm going to go down a little bit deeper. Sides are about right. Then cut out the bottom of that one, and then we should be getting somewhere. It's not a lot of work actually this stage getting them together. This other piece, same again, but we're cutting up to the middle, not down. Because I've got the sharp edge on this one, I've got to be a bit more careful rather than just ramming the needle file down into it. I'll try and open it a bit first so the needle file at least goes in nicely. Okay, so what I'm recommending is when you've got the top one and the bottom one cut out and you kind of get in there, I would put them on your metal block upside down and then slide them up, and I think you should ideally be able to see a little bit of a gap there. I can't, so I'm gonna choose one to raise it. This one I think is gonna have to go a bit deeper, because if there's no gap there, that means they won't close up perfectly to that level. You want them to sit really close together with those claws perfectly flat. It's important for it finishing nicely, because like I said before, if you've got to shorten the claws, if you solder it up and they're wrong, then you've got to shorten the claws. That means all the angles and thicknesses are all out of alignment as well. So yeah, keep going with your gaps in the middle until you can, when you sit them flat together like this, you should be able to see a little bit of a gap in between them. Push them together on the flat surface, looking straight across. Should be able to see a bit of a gap. As low as my stand goes. Bit of a gap, look. Oh, sorry. Bit of a gap. Cool, so now I know confidently when I tap them together, they are gonna close right up. So one of my finer grades, buff sticks. Just hit the sides gently. Okay, so try and slot them together in my hands first of all. If they're a bit tight, you might need to put them down, give them a bit of tappy tappy. Mine are a bit loose. Balls! I wanted them to be a bit tight so I can just slot them together. But they line up pretty good. I mean, they go down enough, that's the important thing. But they're a bit loose, it's a bit of a shame. They're not gappy and flapping about or nothing, but they're a bit looser than I would have liked. But yeah, look, there you go. Look at these. Look how sharp and nice it is. Like, you'd never carve that up by hand and get it as accurate as that. So yeah, this is what I meant by you can have two shapes and then possibly get away with one solder. If you just put a lot of solder on there, flooded it up, it went all around it nicely, it would work. But I would recommend putting a small bit of solder there and a small bit of solder there and flooding it up gently. It's usually the best way to proceed when you're finishing off a piece of jewellery, rather than just flooding it with loads of solder. Just show you that it's a bit loose. If yours, like mine, a little bit dodgy, you gotta just be sure when it's set up for soldering, everything's like a perfect cross. And then not only that, look at it from the side. You want they're all standing up vertically. Yeah, you don't want one tilting left or right. So no tilts, and then perfectly crossing each other on top, and then obviously very easily just sits there, and just put two little bits of solder on. So I will look at mine closely, get it set up exactly how I want it. Okay, update. I did not like putting it on my charcoal block. I couldn't see all the angles and stuff were correct, so my trusty old tweezers and slot trick, much easier just to look around it and get my head down and stuff and really check all angles. So it was much easier with it here rather than sitting down on the charcoal block. Okay, so gently get it fluxed, moving it about. This is crunch time. If you try and solder it and solder floods up the side of the claw, you ballsed it up a little bit. You can get out of it with paper discs and stuff, do quite a good job, but again, it's one of those things, much better if it doesn't happen. If you can complete a piece of jewellery without making mistakes like that, it just speeds you up so much. Do I like that angle? Have a double check around it, you like how it's about to be soldered up. sorted. A general, gentle warm up. Boil all the flux and make sure it's not going to move around a lot. Again, benefit if you've got them wedged together nice and strong, you've got no risk of it moving when solder dries up over it. Alright, let's get a little bit of solder on it. I think you can get away with a bit of a big chunk perhaps. Oh, this is a bit too big. This is a bit too big. I'm gonna stupidly, perhaps, carry on with it. These little torches, flame is too hot. More likely to make a mistake with them, I think. Although a lot of people like using them. Characteristics of silver, conducts heat, so the whole thing has to get hot. Get solder to flood. I'm holding the flame quite far away because it helps me warm it up slowly. Heating from the bottom. Oh, oh my god, yeah, flooded but didn't go down in the gaps. Alright, and now I'm going to add a tiny little bit and hopefully it will go down. Alright, make sure it's nice and close so you can have a laugh when this all falls apart and goes wrong. Soldering this side, trying to get it to pull down. Oh my god. Worked beautifully. Okay, so I got away with that, just. That was not as skillful as I like to work. Basically what happened is, I don't know if you saw it on screen, the first bit of solder blobbed on top, and then I added a little bit on the side, and then heating it up again, it just ran down everywhere. So I got kind of lucky, it's got solder down all 4 sides now. So there we go, look, I actually added 2 more bits of solder because I think what was happening was, remember, there's a tiny little gap halfway. I think that wanted to fill up with solder before it would flow up the sides nicely. So we have got my 4 sides. It's a bit messy, look. Oh, that was really messy. That one looks alright, kind of neat. Dodgy gappy side. So yeah, basically looking around it, is everything straight? Just looking around it now, making sure I like all my angles. Is that all nice and straight? Looking down that way, is it a nice cross? All this, all just basically everything. And for cleaning up, we're using a little rubber disc. I use these all the time on my channel. I can put a card on the screen where I go in depth on using them. What I do is, before I spin it, I sort of touch it on the side, make sure I like the angle I'm holding it. There you go, just you seeing what that's doing. It's just cutting away the solder joint, making it nice and sharp. Have a look at the side of your disc, make sure it's still sharp. The solder joint is quite neat, so it doesn't need too much. Needs a bit more. Skim the side a little bit there. With your fingers, just touch my thumb then, that was not good. Very light, you let the disc do the cutting, not pushing hard at all. These take a bit of practice to use accurately and nicely, but when you get used to them, they're really helpful and allow you to sharpen bits up. Like, see how quick that was? That's perfectly sharpened up now. After a polish, that will look really perfect. If I had to go in there with a needle file and file that solder joint back and then go in with a needle file wrapped up in paper and then paper it back, it would just never be as good as that. And obviously doing that is so much slower as well. So I really recommend using those discs. If you've been filing the sides, changing the angles or whatever you wanted to do to it, you've got to paper it afterwards. Paper discs, definitely best tool for that. I can put a card on the screen for a video I did on paper disc as well. This is a coarse one, that's good for actually shaping metal. This, I've only got coarse one, so what I did was I cut out a disc of smoother grey paper and just glued it onto the back of one. So that's good now for a bit more gentle finishing off on the side. See that? Again, really accurate, really fast. As gentle or as rough as you want to be. If you made one of these and then had it cast, really good for cleaning up the casting finish if you've got to get it polished. And platinum, you can get these polished, but it's quite a lot of work. You have to do a lot of rubber wheeling and then go down to the finest grades of paper, and then a lot of bristle brushing. Yeah, a lot of careful work, but you can get them done really accurately. Okay, got it all papered up, roughly, very quickly. Just really checking my angles. Sometimes I don't like it, and then I'm like, oh, it's alright. I think it's alright. If you're looking at that thinking, my good God, look how high it is. Look at all that metal, what a waste. I'm not intending that's just plonked on top of a ring like that, although some people would like that, I'm sure. Like, you could cut off whatever you need, file off the bottom, it can be like that, it can be a respectable collet. If you're having something cast, it's nice to make things a little bit longer than you would choose anyway, because it gives you a bit of flexibility on design. And I suppose we should check the stone. This is the measurement I took going across it. It sits in there quite well. And I actually think it's quite cool if you set a stone like that, rather than going to corner. I think it's quite a fun thing to do. It must have been done in the past. I've never made one like that, but quite nice. So you can see the stone all around it, fills up the space under the claws really well. Quite like this. Should probably actually properly make a ring with a collet like that. Any jewellers or people with a bit of experience making things or dealing with customers and that, or just people interested in jewellery design, will recognise this kind of collet as like a Tiffany style. I googled it and I couldn't find anything by Tiffany's that was the 6-claw version of what I'm thinking of. But yeah, Tiffany's, we used to call it a Tiffany style. It's basically that, but with 6 claws. So we made it with 2 parts. Imagine it making it with 3 parts. So you'd end up with 6 claws, all kind of flat-sided like that. You can buy them in from jewellery parts supply companies. When you do that, they're alright, I guess, the ones we used, but I felt they were always a little bit thin. Especially in platinum, you've got to paper them and polish them so severely to get a nice mirror finish around it. Almost can go a bit thin if you're not really careful. So yeah, slightly chunky ones, quite nice to actually hold and see in my hand. Might benefit, I think. I kept talking about having it thinned off at the top. I do like the idea of that design. It's almost a bit too straight and chunky looking. If it tapered off towards the top, I think that'd be quite nice. And then remember, like I said at the start of the video, you can design that how you want it. You could have a little bit of width, a bit of curve. My claws are dead straight. Apart from tapering, they are straight angles. You could give it a bit of a curve, do what you want. So if you want to make one, do your own design. It might be more satisfying for you to come up with it when you get to the finishing stages. When you get to the finishing stages, it might be more satisfying for you to have your own design, your own thing created. Happy with how it turned out, and yeah, that's how I did it. So cool, I hope you like the video, hope you make one yourself, do your own design. I encourage you to be creative and not do exactly what I do, but just kind of take what you need and apply it to whatever you're making yourself. Thank you for joining me. Thanks again to all the patrons, new members. If you want to support the channel, help me do more, you can become a patron yourself or a member yourself by clicking the links in the description. It's all there for you. And yeah, hope you join me again on the channel for the next video. See you then, bye.